What's up, guys? This is Zadi from Gate 7 International, and I'm here for a special little segment that we've got planned for you today. I'm calling this Finance and Football, and this is going to be the first of a couple of different videos where we talk about what goes on in the world of finance in football and how it affects things. So, following the interview we did with Kostas Karapapas, the vice president of Olympiacos, we received a number of questions regarding the details of things like financial fair play, player purchases, the squad ratio, and other things that are very complicated, but a reality that exists for Olympiacos. So my goal with the episode is to try and cover a few things related to finance and football, just to give you a better understanding of the landscape and how things work. So, we're primarily going to be discussing the ins and outs of player transfers. So, we'll start with the most straightforward of topics when it comes to transfers, and that's the player purchases. So, we'll start with a quick example. Team A wants to purchase a player from Team B. Team A makes an offer for the player to Team B. If the offer meets the value that player A has for this player, they then exchange for the agreed sum. Now, most people, when this exchange occurs, simply assume that this is the end of the deal. Unfortunately, it's not. This is actually just the beginning of the deal. Very rarely do transfers in football ever involve a team paying the entire sum of a player's value up front. For example, Team A makes an offer for a player from Team B, which is accepted by Team B. This establishes the monetary value of the player. However, following this, the teams then have to agree on the number of installments that will be made. So Team A will make to Team B a certain number of payments, which we call installments, in order to complete the purchase. So let's make this easy, and we're going to use an example with raw numbers. Team A offers Team B 4 million euros for Carl Igma. Team B agrees to this sum of 4 million euros. After agreeing to the sum, Team A then tells Team B, I'm going to pay you the sum of 4 million euros in 1 million euro installments. I will make 4 installments over the course of a year, one installment every 3 months. By the end of the calendar year, Team A will then have paid the agreed upon transfer value of the player. Player transfers can get even more complicated if there's different clauses and sell-on fees that are attached to the player. So let's say that Carl Igma, who has been targeted by Team B gets an offer from Team A for 4 million euros. But Team B, even though they want to sell the player, want to retain a value in a potential future sale. They believe Carl will grow further, and they want to reap the benefits of a sale in the future. So Team B counters Team A by offering them 80% of Carl Ligma's rights for 4 million euros. This means Team B would retain 20% of whatever the future sale is that Team A receives should they decide to sell the player in the future. Now, if Team A agrees to this, they would still travel to Team A, but Team B would retain a portion of his rights. Now, let's talk about how the transfers hit the books. So, the transfer's been completed. The player has arrived to his new team, but now the team has to record what happened in the books. Due to a set of rules known as financial fair play, teams are required to keep detailed ledgers about all of their financial information. This includes every activity of what they spend their money on and what they receive in terms of revenues. For now, we're just going to focus on the impact of the transfer itself. We'll save the budgets and the balance sheets and the other items that are involved in running a club for another video. So we're going to look back at Team A. So Team A, as we know, has purchased Carl Ligma for 4 million euros. They're paying for the player in 4 installments over the course of the year. They also agreed with Carl to sign him to a 4-year contract where they will pay him 1 million euros per year to play for the team. So some of you look at this and say, all right, Team A paid 4 million for Carl. He's getting a wage of 1 million per year. So in 1 year, he's costing the club 5 million. Year 2, 3, 4, he's costing the club 1 million in each of those consecutive years. But that's not the way you look at it. Clubs can do something called amortizing a player's transfer fee over the lifetime of the contract. Amortization is an accounting technique that is used to lower the book value of a loan of an intangible asset over time. So in counting, a transfer fee is an expense or a liability. This will negatively impact the accounting of the club. So in order to reduce the severity of the negative impact, a club can amortize the player's transfer fee so that the books are not hit so negatively all at once. And they can do more business in the short term by spreading the negative value over future periods. So let's look back to the example of Carl Ligma. So Team A purchased Carl Ligma for 4 million and they signed him to a 4-year contract. So Team A will amortize Carl's 4 million euro fee by spreading it out over his 4-year contract. So this means Carl's impact on the club's finances will be 1 million euro per year from the transfer fee and 1 million euro, of course, with his wage. So this means that Carl's impact on a per year basis, if we include his wage, is 2 million euros per year. So to better visualize the positive impact of this, let's pretend Team A has a budget for the summer of 10 million euros. If when they purchase Carl, the full 4 million euros of his transfer fee hits the books in the first year, along with his 1 million in wages, this would mean that Team A would only have 5 million euros of profit left to work with for future transfers before going into the negative. But with the amortization schedule, Team A only gets hit for 2 million, 1 million of the fee, and then the 1 million of wage. This would mean that of their budget, they have 8 million euros left to play with before going into the red as far as FFP is concerned. So the act of amortizing these transfers helps clubs spread the costs out over longer periods of time. This way they can do more business and not risk punishment under FFP. Now, we can get more complicated with this because clubs can play more games with how they recognize these fees and how they depreciate them. I'm not going to spend too much time discussing this, but in the previous example, if let's assume that Team A takes control of Carl's player rights immediately and then depreciates immediately. But clubs don't necessarily have to do that. For the sake of the example and for the sake of simplicity, we're saying that they get him right away and they recognize his rights immediately. But clubs, especially if they're close to a reporting period, can choose to recognize the rights of a player based on when the player shows up or when they make installments for the player. They can choose to delay the recognition of those rights and then delay the reporting periods in which that they're impacting. So let's take another example. Team A makes the agreement with Team B for Carl Ligma for 4 million euros. Now, there's an FFP reporting deadline 4 days away from the day of the transfer. Let's say Carl's not scheduled to arrive officially for Team A until after the reporting deadline. In this case, since Carl has not officially signed a contract with Team A, they do not have to report anything about the fee or his rights until his arrival. Furthermore, a team can also choose to phase in a player's amortization based on the payments that are made. So in this case, Team A could start recognizing and depreciating Carl's fee based on the installments that are made. More specifically, after the first installment of 1 million euros, Team A could decide they want to begin depreciating at that time, but only 25% of the player's value because they've only paid for 25% of the agreed upon fee. And they can do this at the same time from the time of each future installment. So Just by looking at the purchasing side of things, we can see here that things are a little bit more complicated than just you bought a player for 4 million, he could get sold for something, profit loss. It doesn't work like that because all of these football clubs keep ledgers. And in order to reduce the negative impact that a sale or something has, you play these types of games. And this will help you be able to purchase more players. But if you are not careful, down the line, a year, 2 years, what have you, these costs and this negative impact on the balance sheet can creep up on you. So you better hope that if you're going to play these games and make a lot of moves early, that you are able to pay when the time comes. You can only kick the can down the road so much, as we say in English. So these are things that you need to be aware of, and this is just on the purchasing side. Let's talk about selling a player. Player sales, much like we discussed with the process of buying a player and how that impacts things on the books for FFP, are a little bit more complicated, just like with player purchases. Just like with player purchases, the sales are not linear. You sell a player for X amount after you bought them for Y amount. Most people will say that's the difference is your profit. And in a way, that's kind of correct. You can think about it that way, but this is not the way things are tabulated for financial fair play. So we're going to go back to our example with Carl Ligma, and we're going to illustrate kind of how things look on the sale side of things instead of the purchase. So Team A purchased Carl Ligma for 4 million euros. Carl played for Team A for 2 seasons. And then Team C comes along. And Team C offers to purchase Carl for 7 million euros from Team A. Team A accepts the offer, receives a 7 million euro for Carl. So if we're going by what most of you tend to consider a purchase or how you look at purchases, you're remembering that Carl was purchased for 4 million euros. So when you receive the 7 million euro, some of you are thinking that's 3 million euro profit. Great business. And while you're correct, it's positive business. It's not exactly 3 million in profit, as far as FFP is concerned, at least. Just like with player purchases, the way sales hit the books is also quite different. So because we're amortizing our player purchases, when we sell a player or an asset, we refer to any profit as book value, whether it's positive or negative. And it's calculated just a little bit differently. So we're going to look back at the amortization schedule for Carl and Team A. Carl was purchased for 4 million euros, and he signed a 4-year deal. So the cost of his fee was spread over the 4 years at 1 million per year. So since Carl has played for Team A for 2 seasons, we've already recognized and amortized 2 seasons of his fee, which equals 2 million euros, 1 million per season. So that means that we still have 2 million euros of his fee, which have yet to hit the books. So when Team C purchases Carl from Team A, that final 2 million euros of the transfer liability gets subtracted from the revenue received from the purchase. In other words, Carl's sale generates a positive book value of 5 million euros as far as FFP is concerned. 2 million euro of his initial fee has already been amortized. So we're not including that, but there's still 2 million left. So we receive 7, we deduct the 2 million, and we have now achieved 5 million euros of book value, or some of you call it profit, with regards to the sale. And this is incredibly important because if we had looked at just the 7 minus 4 is 3 and looked at 3 million profit, it means that Team A would only have 2 million euros left of revenue space with which to make additional moves. So now imagine you're maintaining a club's balance sheet over the course of multiple years. As you can imagine, the amortization schedule and the player fees can get out of control. If too many players are signed, there are not enough revenues to balance the liabilities and expenses. This can require clubs then to make sales in order to generate positive book value and to balance our books. Remember what Olympiacos had to do last summer. If clubs are unable to keep the books balanced or positive, they can be penalized if there's successive years of losses. Now, owners are able to inject investment into clubs up to a certain amount in order to cover losses. But if the losses exceed a certain level and for a 3-year period, UEFA then can sanction clubs with forfeiture of European competition or just fines. As you can see, football finance is incredibly complicated and it's incredibly intricate. I'm only scratching the surface with some of the things I'm telling you. And the whole purpose again of me just discussing this with you is to really to explore and explain why things are not always as it seems. It's not the finance aspect of football is not simple by any means. A lot goes on behind the scenes, and a lot of fans get very upset over club finances and they end up accusing ownership of not spending. So, just like Lambros said, guys, there's so much more to this than what you see at face value. Nothing is as simple as it seems. I hope you guys found this video helpful. And as always, your feedback is appreciated and it's greatly valued on any of our videos. But I hope you also get an idea that maybe what you thought went into the buying and selling and the operations of a club maybe isn't exactly what really goes on behind the scenes. And this was just one very small aspect of it. We will go and do more, but this is a very complicated process. So when we tell you when it comes to the transfer fees and what we can do over the summer, we're not just saying that because we want you to leave the club alone. No, of course not. There's plenty of things that you can criticize the club for, but this aspect of it is very complicated and bad decisions can haunt you in the future. I'm Adi. This is Gate 7 International by the fans for the fans. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time.